I work in a factory outside the city, on a road where there are no houses or anything, just scrubland and a bridge before you get there. I start at 5 o'clock sharp, but sometimes I leave early because I drop my husband off at the hospital for some treatments. When that happens, I end up arriving at 4:15 in the morning when they haven't even opened the parking lot yet. And on the day I'm going to tell you about, I did the same thing as always. I was just crossing the bridge in the car, still going slowly, when I saw something I never, ever thought I'd see at that hour. A child sitting on the edge with his little legs dangling over the void as if he were waiting, I don't know, the moment to jump. I thought I was hallucinating or that someone was playing a game, but it was 4 in the morning. There wasn't a soul around, no cars pass by at that hour, and there are no houses, nothing. As I approached him, he turned around. He didn't move completely. He just slowly turned his head, and when the headlights hit his face, his eyes shone as if he had something in them. I don't know how to explain it, but they shone. They weren't reflecting the light. They were shining in a very strange way. I felt something horrible, something I couldn't quite put my finger on at the time. I just accelerated a little more without braking, without looking back. I crossed the bridge and kept going straight. I told myself 100 times that it was probably a kid who'd wandered off, but nobody lives there. He would have had to come from very far away. I got to the spot where I always park, the place where I wait for the store to open. I turned off the car, reclined the seat, and tried to forget what I'd seen. I forced myself to think I was just tired, that my mind had played a cruel trick on me. I closed my eyes and just tried to sleep for a little while. I don't know how much time passed, but I know I was drifting off when I heard the door. It wasn't a knock, it wasn't a scrape. They were trying to open it. I heard the clear pull, like when someone wants to open a door and yanks the handle really hard. I woke up with a start, my heart in my throat, and the first thing I thought was, they saw me asleep and they're gonna jump me. I sat up and looked outside. I carefully peered around. I looked in all directions, but there was nobody. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody. There's absolutely nothing nearby. No stores, no cars, no bus stops. All around me was empty highway and darkness. I stayed still, listening without moving. I rolled the window down a little, but I couldn't hear anything else. I didn't hear or feel any footsteps. I didn't see any shadows. I didn't hear anyone running, nothing. I sat there with my heart still racing, looking all around in the mirrors. When the parking lot opened, I drove on slowly and felt a little calmer, like when dawn breaks and you think you're imagining everything. Things seem much easier when the sun comes out. I got out of the car and closed the door. And that's when I saw little hands in the paint, right on the door they had tried to open. There were painted hands, tiny hands like a child's, imprinted perfect, as if they had been pressed hard. They weren't dirty with mud, grease, or dirt from the road. They were painted white, as if made with chalk or school paint. 2 very light ones, drawn exactly as if someone had tried to open the door. I stared at them for a while. I didn't even know what to do. I couldn't say anything at work, because how do you explain it? How do you say you saw a child on a dark bridge and then someone or something tried to open the door for you and left their handprints? I cleaned them later that afternoon when I left. And yes, they came off, but it took a while, as if they'd been there a long time, as if they'd been there much earlier that night. For now, I haven't gone over the bridge so early again. If I have to take my husband to the hospital, after I drop him off, I go to work, but I stay on the side of the road before I get to the bridge. I park there and sleep, but I don't go near that stretch of road when it's still so dark. I'm terrified, absolutely terrified, to see him again. I'm from a small town in Michoacan. I lived there my whole life with my parents and siblings. I never left home until I was accepted to the University of Morelia. My parents were very proud, but also very nervous, because I'm the oldest, the first in the family to go to university, and the first to move to the city. They knew they couldn't afford to pay me a very high rent, so we started looking for a house that would be relatively close to the school, but one that could handle more expenses later so we could all chip in and pay. Finally, we found a little house on a quiet street a few blocks from an avenue where minibuses pass and there are small shops. It wasn't unusual, but it wasn't out of the way either. It was an old one-story house with a slightly neglected facade, but nothing extraordinary. A metal gate, a small window on one side, and inside a small hallway leading to a patio and the rooms. The plan was for me to stay the first few months alone, and I hoped that once my daughters were in college I could invite them to share the house. What struck me as odd from the beginning was how quiet the house felt. In my hometown, I always heard dogs, roosters, radios, people talking all the time. Not there. Sometimes cars passed by, yes, but at night it was almost just the echo of my own footsteps, as if people weren't awake that late. The house had 3 rooms. One faced the street, and I took that one because I loved watching people go by. Another room overlooked the patio, and the third was at the back next to a bathroom that looked like it had been added later with different tiles. The living room and dining room were almost empty, with some old armchairs left by the last tenants and a plastic table. I brought my mattress, my wardrobe, my things, and at first, I was excited. It was the first time I'd ever had a room of my own, especially in a new place. I want to make it clear from the start so you don't expect anything different, that I've never seen anything like this before. I didn't hear anything strange directly. There was never a shadow. I never heard a voice. Nothing. Everything I'm going to tell you comes from the other people who felt, heard, and saw things there. And that's precisely it, not being able to see myself, that scares me the most. Anyway, the point is that the first few weeks were normal. Going to university, coming back, doing homework, video calling my parents. I was excited, but I also felt very alone. My high school friends stayed in town, and even though we talked, it wasn't the same. That's how it was. One of those weeks I met Gerardo, a guy from school. We started talking in class, then in the cafeteria, and one day he asked me if I wanted to go to the movies. I accepted, obviously, and we arranged to meet on a Saturday downtown. We went to a movie theater in the historic center. We walked around the cobblestone streets for a while. We saw the movie. We went out for drinks, and honestly, I had a really good time. It wasn't a super romantic date, but there definitely felt like there was some chemistry. At least that's what I thought. It was already quite late when we took the bus back. He got off with me at the stop near my house because he still had a bit of a walk to his own, and he said he would walk me to the door. I thanked him because even though the street wasn't dangerous, it was very deserted at that hour. I remember that walk very well. We were chatting about random things, teachers, homework, college gossip. I felt like everything was going well. We arrived at the gate of the house, and I was nervous. I didn't know if he was going to say goodbye, handshake, hug, or what. I stopped in front of the door. I thanked him for walking me home and turned to look at him. And that's when I saw that his face had completely changed. He was looking away. He wouldn't hold my gaze. He couldn't meet my eyes. I asked him if everything was all right, and he said yes, but that he had to go. He didn't hug me or anything. He turned around and walked away quickly, without looking back. I stood there for a second, not understanding what had happened. I wanted to think that maybe he remembered something, that he felt bad. I don't know. I didn't think I'd done anything. I went inside, went to my room, changed, and went to sleep with that strange feeling, but without imagining what had really happened. The next day, I texted him like nothing had happened. I told him thanks for the outing, that I had a great time. He saw the message but didn't reply. Weeks went by, and at school he started avoiding me. If I was in the group, he'd go off with someone else. If I said hi, he barely responded. I started overthinking it 1,000 times. I kept thinking about what I had said or done wrong. Until one day, after class, we left almost at the same time, and for the first time in all that time, he couldn't avoid us ending up face to face in the doorway of the classroom. I took a deep breath and approached him. "Hey," I said, "did I do something to you? Seriously, if something I did or said bothered you, I'd rather you just tell me." Gerardo felt uncomfortable. He looked around as if making sure no one was listening. Then he sighed, as if resigned. "No, you didn't do anything," she said. "I just don't want any trouble." That sentence bothered me even more because I didn't understand it. "Trouble with whom?" I asked her. She was silent for a few seconds and finally said in a low voice, "With your mom." I felt like my head had been emptied at that moment. I said, trying not to sound angry, "Gerardo, my mom doesn't even live in Morelia. What's wrong with you?" He laughed, but without humor, and answered, "Carolina, do you think I'm making this up? I saw them. I remember perfectly how that phrase stuck in my mind. I saw them." "Who?" He told me then that when he took me there, when I was facing away from my house, behind me at the window, he saw a woman combing a little girl's hair. I felt something tighten in my chest when he told me that, but I didn't answer, and he continued. "I thought it was your mom with your sister, or an aunt. I don't know. But they didn't look normal. The woman was pulling the little girl's hair really hard. The little girl's face was all pressed together, holding the pain. And I didn't really want to see much, to be honest, but out of the corner of my eye, I saw the woman giving her hair some really nasty tugs. She was quiet for a second and then lowered her voice even more. Suddenly, they both stopped looking down and turned to look at me together. The woman grabbed the girl's hair even tighter, as if she were showing off that she could pull it harder. And with her other hand, she slowly ran her finger along her neck, as if making a gesture of cutting her throat. And all this without taking her eyes off me. I don't know how long I stayed quiet. The only thing I managed to say in response was, There was nobody in that room. There was nobody in the house that night. Nobody else lived there but me. Gerardo looked at me with a face that mixed fear, discomfort, and a bit of pity. No, well then it's worse, but I'm not going to get involved in that. Sorry, Caro, but I don't want any trouble with whatever is in your house. And he left, and this time I knew he was never going to talk to me the same way again. That day I left the university almost automatically. I took the bus home. I opened the gate, went inside, and stood in the living room, looking towards my room. I closed the curtains on the window facing the street, as if that could erase the image she had described to me. A short time after that, the roommates I was waiting for finally arrived. 2 girls from other majors who had also come from out of town and needed a place to live. One is named Mariana, and the other, Fer. To this day, they're great friends. At first, everything was cool. Each of us had our own room. We agreed about the rent, utilities, who took out the trash, and things like that. I didn't tell them anything Gerardo told me because, honestly, I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding crazy. Besides, I thought that if they didn't feel anything strange, maybe there was some explanation for what he saw, or maybe he was just imagining things. But it wasn't long before the topic came up on its own. One night, the 3 of us were in the kitchen having dinner. It was one of those nights when you're chatting while you wash the dishes, check your phone, and then it got late without you even realizing it. Finals had just ended, and we were more relaxed than usual. I don't know how it happened, but I ended up telling them about the date. I started with the usual stuff, that I'd gone out with a guy who suddenly acted weird, then started avoiding me, and they were making faces, getting indignant, you know. Then I told them, but later I talked to him, and he told me why the game is coming out. And I just want to tell you, so you can tell me if it sounds crazy. And then I told them exactly what I told them. I just told you. The woman combing the girl's hair, the tugging, the stare, the mark on her neck. When I finished, they both stared at me, mouths slightly open. Are you kidding? Mariana asked. I didn't tell her. Why or what? Fer let out a nervous laugh and said, Carew, this house is super haunted. We thought you already knew. And that's when I felt scared. Not because they'd called me haunted, but because of the way they said it. It didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like something they'd already talked about amongst themselves. What do you mean, haunted? What? Have you felt it? I asked them. Mariana was the first to speak. I haven't seen anything, but since I arrived, I can tell you that almost every night I hear what sounds like a little girl crying, like it's coming from the closet. My throat went numb when I heard that. I asked her if she was talking about the closet in her room. Yes, and you're not going to believe this, but I even put a chair in front of it at night, wedging the door shut. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I can't sleep if I don't wedge the door like that. Then Fer said, my experience was different. Once I was home alone because you all went home for the weekend. I went to take a shower late, around 11. I was relaxing with the door closed, when out of nowhere I felt a really hard blow to my face, a direct slap, not with a normal open hand, but a hard one. It left my face burning. I thought I'd hit myself on something, but there was nothing there. She touched her cheek as she remembered. I could hear you and felt myself shrinking in the chair. But didn't you ever see anyone? I asked. Then Fer answered. See? Not me, but my friends did. She explained that a couple of times her and Mariana's friends had come over to do homework or watch movies, and that more than one of them, when they went out to smoke in the patio as they arrived, had turned to my bedroom window and asked things like, has your roomie arrived yet? She had looked out the window. Who's with you? I thought I was alone, but there was someone at the window. And they always referred to the same place, the same window, the one that faces the street, the same place where Gerardo had seen the woman with the girl. Mariana gave me a strange look and asked if I really had never heard anything, and I just shook my head. I told them that the strangest thing I had felt was discomfort with the silence, especially when I was alone, but nothing more. No crying, no banging, no slapping, no people at the window. Nothing. Well, that's good, actually, Fer said. Maybe you're not sensitive, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. And that phrase stuck with me because that's precisely the problem. To this day, I can't say, I saw this such and such happen to me inside that house. But I can no longer walk down the hall at night without imagining Mariana's closet with the chair blocking the door, or the bathroom where someone slapped Fer even though no one was home, or my own window where, according to us, someone always appears. Always. Obviously, I've never seen the woman combing the girl's hair, nor have I heard her crying, nor have I been touched. But I do know there's something there, because too many people have seen and felt very specific things for it all to be a coincidence. And the worst part isn't seeing something. The worst part, at least for me, is knowing that if there is something in that house, I'll never know when it's a meter away from me, when it's trying to whisper in my ear and I won't even realize it. I just wanted to share this with you. Maybe someone in the community has experienced something similar, houses where everyone sees things except the person who lives there. And that's it. Although it sounds strange, it's a different kind of scary because you don't know if you're the luckiest or the most vulnerable. I'd love to know how to start watching. When they moved to the city many years ago, they had to live however they could. Houses with dirt floors, dampness everywhere, and holes in the walls that let the cold in at night. They never complained because it was the first thing they could afford, but they did have a very hard time at first. After that, someone offered them to stay in another house near the same area. It wasn't pretty, and the odd thing wasn't the peeling paint or the old windows, or even the fact that a workshop appeared through the high windows that blocked the view outside. The strangest thing was the high ceiling. The owner warned them when she gave them the key to stay on the first floor, not to go upstairs, that there was nothing up there. And that, of course, caught their attention because there was an old cement staircase without a railing, but it was between the kitchen and the living room, without reaching the upper floors. Nothing dark. Upstairs ended a metal door, locked with a padlock, and it was clear it hadn't been opened in a long time because it was covered in dust, cobwebs, and rust stains, like water that had seeped in from inside. From the first night, there were signs of what they were about to experience, and that was beyond the terrible cold. You see, my mother was left alone, and my father returned from work at 3 a.m. He says he got off the van as if nothing was wrong and walked the 6 blocks. The house was dark. When he entered, he found my mother sitting on the edge of the bed, trembling and crying with fear. She could barely tell him that someone was upstairs. She whispered, as if afraid of being heard, and said she was sure it was a person, that something had been walking around. My father tried to calm her down. He told her it was probably just the sheets of metal moving in the wind, but she insisted that couldn't do something like that she could clearly hear footsteps. And they were footsteps, not quick ones, but slow ones, as if patiently, letting himself be heard, circling again and again and again. My dad went outside to look, but from below he couldn't make anything out, only the very high black roof. There were no stairs outside, no way to climb up, no access from the first floor. And outside there were no stairs either, no nearby walls, no houses attached. There was nothing for 60 meters around. The following nights were the same. My dad acted strong, but my mom hardly slept. She always had to wait alone until the early hours of the morning for my dad. The footsteps returned, and the worst part was when they weren't just footsteps anymore. Sometimes it sounded like a dragging, like something heavy moving, and one night there was laughter that wasn't afraid to hide, just like the footsteps. Whatever was upstairs wanted to be noticed, and my dad finally took the plunge. One Thursday at 2:30 in the morning, when the footsteps sounded again, just as he was arriving, he went up the stairs and slammed the metal door with all his might. The laughter stopped, and so did the footsteps. Then, he went downstairs and stood there, breathless, listening from the first floor. Nothing else was heard all night, not a rustle, not a weight moving. The next day, he asked for tools at the construction site where he worked. That night, when he heard something up there again, he went back up. He forced the lock with a hammer and a screwdriver. The door opened, and all he saw was nothing. An empty room in the middle of the rooftop, no roof, no window, nothing, completely unfinished, with no sign of anyone there and no sign of how someone could have climbed up. But my mom wasn't reassured. On the contrary, she remained stressed. But at least they had a few quiet nights. For the first time, they were able to sleep through the night. However, one Saturday, after visiting some friends very late as they were walking home, they saw it. For the first time, they saw it. My dad says that at first he thought it was a bundle, a sack, something forgotten that seemed to be sticking out of the roof. But no, it was a face peeking out from the roof over the edge. The face of a very old woman with white hair was looking down at them. When they realized she was watching them, the old woman hid behind them as if she were crawling or sliding quickly across the ceiling. And that night, they didn't want to go in. They didn't dare take another step toward her house. They turned back without looking, reached the road, and took a taxi. They went back to their friend's house and asked if they could stay the night, and luckily, they agreed. The next day, they went to talk to the owner, asked her what was up there, who lived on that roof. They told her they had forced the door, climbed onto the roof, and what they saw there. The woman got angry. First, she yelled at them for opening the door she had specifically forbidden them from. Then she told them they had to leave as soon as possible without further explanation, and they agreed without arguing. They just wanted to get their things and leave. When they had gathered what little they had and were walking with difficulty toward the road, some local children passed by. And they asked them, "Did you live in the witch's house?" My dad says he tried not to listen, but the children kept going. "The witch lives on the roof. Sometimes she peeks out. Sometimes she jumps high to land on other roofs and takes kittens or dogs. That's why they throw stones at her so she won't come near, so she won't hurt us." They didn't say anything else. They didn't ask any more questions. They went back to playing. Many years later, I learned the story from my parents' conversations. They both told it separately and very different. My mom never wanted to tell it. The memory was too painful. My dad made it more exciting, more entertaining. But they both told it with the same details, exactly the same. Today, my mom is gone, and since then, my dad kind of stopped telling it. But every now and then, he mentions it in a single comment to describe it, to describe that moment in his life. That memory refers to it as the witch's house on the roof.